Welcome back, sixth grade scholars. We hear a lot about some acronyms that stand for math. Here's my favorite: mistakes allow thinking to happen. Well, I've come up with a new favorite: math. Math at Terry's house. You guessed it, I miss Terry. Today, we will be discussing fractions, decimals, and percents. Our objective of today, I will be able to use a visual model to represent fractions, decimals, and percents. Let's go ahead and get started. What do you think fractions, decimals, and percents have in common? Take about 10 seconds to just kind of jot down a couple of ideas. But it is my hope that over the next few sessions, we will connect to your ideas and many more. We're going to start with some basic vocabulary. Your vocabulary will be found in your learning link, and it looks as such. You want to have your notebook out so that you can write down the term, the definition, and a pictorial representation as needed. If you look at this picture, it's like, oh, I have one that I can think of better, or I have an example that I remember, be my guest. Change them up. However, you want to make sure you write in your notebook each of the terms that you are not as familiar with and you may need to know for this week's lesson, because the learning target is going to be composed of a lot of these particular terms, definitions, and pictorial representations. So pause the video, determine which of these terms and which you're going to need to write, put them in your notebook, and once you're done, come back and join us. Also, we're going to do a quick introduction video just so that we can just kind of remember what it is to have the conversion between fractions, decimals, and percents. So we're going to get started with this one.
So let's assume that this entire square represents a whole. And we can see that part of it is shaded in blue. What we're going to do in this video is try to represent the part that is shaded in blue as a fraction, as a decimal, and as a percent. So pause the video and see if you can do that. Well, let's first think about it as a fraction. So the whole is split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 equal sections, and 6 of them are filled in. So the blue represents 6/10 of a whole, or represents, you could say, just say 6/10. And you could also rewrite that. If you divide the numerator and the denominator by 2, that's the same thing as 3 over 5. Fair enough? Now let's represent it as a decimal. What decimal would it be? Pause the video again and see if you can do that. Well, 6/10, we could literally just go to our place value. So that's the ones place, we have a decimal. And then you have your tenths place. And so we have 6/10, so you could just put it right over there. We are putting a 6 in the tenths place to represent 6/10. Now what about a percentage? Well, percent means per 100. So one way to think about it is 6 over 10 is the same thing as what per 100? That is equal to, if we multiply the numerator and the denominator by 10, that's the same thing as 60 per 100. Or another way of thinking about it, 60 per, instead of 100, you could say cent. And so this would be equal to 60%. Let's do another example. So here, once again, our entire square represents a whole. So see if you can represent this as the part that's shaded in blue as a fraction. Pause the video and do that. Well, you can see that this is a 10 by 10 grid. So there's 100 equal sections here. 100 equal sections. Each of these squares represents 1/100th. And how many of them are there? Well, let's see, this row is 10, 20, 30, 40, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 44 over 100, 44 hundredths. And we could actually represent this in other ways. We could divide the numerator and the denominator by 4, in which case you would get 11 over 25. That's another way to represent this same fraction. Now what about as a decimal? Well, 44 hundredths, you could say, well, you have your ones place, and then this is the same thing. You literally just say this is 44 hundredths. This is another way of representing 44 hundredths. It's 4 tenths, and 4 hundredths is 44 hundredths. And then if you were to do a percent, well, this is 44 per hundred, or 44 hundredths, but even here I like looking at it as 44 per hundred, or 44 per cent. So this is going to be 44%. And we're done.
Okay, awesome. So that was pretty simple. So now we're going to just look at our next section. How do we write a percent as a fraction? As indicated in the video, we know that percent means out of 100 or per 100. So we just put our denominator of 100 and anything in front of the percent sign as our numerator. So let's try this. And these are very simple, so we're going to go through these fairly quickly. However, you always want to think about reducing your fraction when you can to its simplest form. So we have 90%, 90 over 100, 90 hundredths, which also say 90 divided by 100. We divide both by 10 to get 9 tenths. So that's the simplified fraction. Okay, 32 hundredths, again, over 100. And we're going to talk about those factors. You might be like, why are those numbers being divided by those numbers in particular? We're going to talk about those in just a second. So this gives us a simplified fraction of 8/25. We have 9 100ths. Already simplified. Can't do anything more with that one. And then we have 120%. Now, whole is 100%. So this just means this is going to give me an improper fraction or a mixed fraction because it's over 100%. So I have 120 over 100, or 120 divided by 100, or 120 100ths. So I divide both my numerator and my denominator by 20, and I get 6/5, which is an improper fraction that changes to 1 1/5 as a mixed fraction. Anytime a percent is over 100%, it's going to give you a mixed fraction and also a mixed decimal. So to make this a little easier for us, let's try to learn our factors of 100 by heart. Always think in terms of money as well if you can. So our factors of 100. 1 and 100, because 1 times 100 gives me 100. 2 and 50, because 2 times 50 gives me 100. 4 times 25, because 4 times 25 gives me 100. 5 times what? Come on, you got it, 20. Gives me 100. And 10 times 10. So 100 becomes a what? A perfect squared number. So our 10 times 10, 10 squared will give me 100. Okay? So how do we write a percent as a decimal? This is fairly simple because percent means out of 100. All we have to do is really take where the percent sign, take our decimal point and move it 2 places to the left. Because we're moving it to the left, that means we're really dividing it by 100. So whenever you look at your percent sign, Your decimal point, if it's not written in, you assume it's behind your ones digit. So if I look at this 37%, here is my decimal. I move it 2 place values and you see me jumping. Then my new decimal point is going to end up here. And I have it written as 37 hundredths, just moving my decimal point. So let's look at 32%. What do you think that's going to be as a decimal point? Good job, 32 hundredths. 9% because we're missing that number in front. But remember, if there's not a number there, we're going to add a filler 0. So we're going to add a 0 there because 9% will give me 9 hundredths. Think about what's shaded. Think about what's shaded in a 10 by 10 grid. That may help you out a lot. Then we think of 90%, 10 rows shaded, 9/10 or 90%. We have this number 120%. Remember that says that we have more than 100%. So if I have something that's more than 100%, I should have a mixed fraction and a mixed decimal. So therefore, this will be 1 and 20 hundredths or 1 and 2/10. But then I have this one over here, 2 and 5/10%. Looks strange because there's a decimal and a percent sign. That can occur occasionally. However, we follow the same process. Move our decimal 2 place values. There will be an empty little space there. Therefore, I fill it in with a filler 0, and I will have 25 thousandths. Please remove your percent sign because it will still be a percent if you forget to take it away. So make sure you remove your percent sign. Okay? So look at the following ones, and I want you to kind of do this as quickly as you can in your head. This is 25%. What would it be as a decimal? You got it, 25 hundredths. 10%, as a decimal, easy peasy. You got it, 10%, 10 hundredths or 1/10, okay? 10 hundredths or 1/10. So you don't necessarily have to have that extra 0 there. Sometimes you will make it a little easier, but you can remove it as well. So 5%, I always think about the pictorial representation. So 5% will give me what? There you go. Good job. 5 hundredths. It's only 5 blocks that's going to be shaded. 132%, over 100. 1 and 32 hundredths. Good job. So if I look at this picture, I just want you to kind of just estimate what's in the middle. Kind of tells you that the weight loss progress is 50%. So if I look at that, it kind of gives me a good indication as to where things will fall when I'm estimating it in a pictorial representation. So let's look at this. What percent does each progress bar show? Let's first determine where 0 falls. Here's my 0. Then on the other side, we always got to know what is our whole. So here is our whole. Well, between 0 and 1, there's what number? 50% or 1/2. Directly in the center. Well, between 0 and 1/2, there is 25% or 1/4. And then between 1/2 and 1, there is 75% or 3/4. Now, there are certain numbers that you should kind of already just, you should know right off the top. And some of these are those. So let's just estimate. If we look at the burgundy line, that one's very simple because it's directly on the line. We should have what? 25%. The green line, if we estimate where it will be, let's try it, 67%. Well, it might be a little bit difficult to see the white line, but I'm going to say around 87, 88 maybe, 88%. Take a few minutes, a few seconds rather, and determine where you're going to see the following 2 lines. Right, let's check and see if you're right. Our next answer, 40%. Good job. And then here we go. This one is very simple because it's directly on our line, 75%. So I want you to do these ones on your own. You're going to take the time and you're going to determine where each of the percents lie. Pause the video, make sure you write down your answers, and once you're complete, join us back again and we will get started. All right, welcome back. So let's check your answers. And I'm just going to go through them. It's going to go down vertically. So the Nautilus, wow, 100%. Electric Blue, 98%. Harvest, 43%. And remember, this is an estimation. So if you said about 45 or 41 or 40, we're going to give you that one, okay? Lucid Dream, 21%. Pear, 23%. Red Planet, 47%. Rubber Black, 78%. And Trendy, 34%. It's an estimation. Now, we can't be too far off, but we want to be as close as possible. Excellent work. So this pictorial representation here, again, just like in the video, is a 10 by 10 grid. And I always say just count them very quickly just to make sure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10 by 10. So that gives us 100 square units here. So this means this is 10, this is 20, this is 30, this is 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So you can think about those tenths, okay? So each one of these smaller ones gives me a unit, and each rod gives me one tenth, okay? So what is the percent here that is shaded? Out of 100, how many are shaded out of 100? 10, 20, 30, 30%. Now, then I can go and count all of these, or I can just move my decimal point and it tells me this is 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. Again, I'm saying it just like it's found in my place value chart. 30 hundredths or 3/10. Again, you want to simplify these if you can. 30 hundredths is equal to 3/10. This representation below, just a kind of a bar model. If we're looking at this, we have 10%, 20%, 30%, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%, or 0, 1/2, and 1 as a whole. So the part that's in the lighter green is 10%, 20%, 30% of it is shaded in the lighter green. So that's 30% that's shaded there. And you can use this later on, especially when we get to some word problems that's going to be dealing with percents. So what percent full? If I look at this graduated cylinder, if I look at this, it says 25 is full. But remember what we said, you always want to take a look at what the whole is. In this case, it is 25 out of 50, not 100, out of 50. So it starts at 25/50ths. So that means I need to enlarge this, because if I'm trying to determine percent full, I know it's out of 100. So if I have the fraction 25/50ths and I need to make sure my denominator is 100, what do I need to do? You guessed it. I'm going to multiply my numerator and my denominator by 2 so I can enlarge my fraction. This is going to give me 50/100ths. Now I can easily change this to a percent. 50%. Great. So let's look at this one. Again, I'm going to take a look at my whole, what I'm looking at for my denominator, and what part is full, which is 40. So this is going to give me 40/50ths. I want to change this to out of 100. So I can multiply both my numerator and my denominator by 2. And I get 80/100ths. So what is that as a percent? Easy peasy. 80%. Good job. So take a few minutes and look at the next two. Once you jot these answers down and think about what we did for the first two, jot down your answer, pause the video, and come back and we can check your answer to see if it's correct. Let's see. 11/50ths, 2200ths. Did you get 22%? You're awesome. All right, so this one, we might have to count a little bit. So that's 40, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50ths. That's really close. 9800ths, which gives us 98%. You're doing an awesome job. Now, remember we were talking about percents being out of 100. But if it's over 100, that means we're going to have a whole grid full plus part of another grid. So this tells us 172%. Whole grid 100% plus the other part of this one, which is the 72%. This will also give me, remember, if you have something that's over 100, it's going to give you a mixed fraction or a mixed decimal. So in this case, I can look at this and say 1 whole, 1 and 72 hundredths. Great. So let's look at this quick demonstration. So in this demonstration, and I'm going to just leave this right here, we have the whites and we have the golds. And I'm just going to make some things up. So we're going to do this together and I'm going to make them up. So I don't even know what the answer is going to be really. So I'm going to go ahead and just shade these in. There we go. What do we have shaded? And remember, first thing you're going to do is what? Make sure you have a 10 by 10 grid. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 10 by 10 grid. How many are shaded in gold? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I have 11 shaded out of 100. 11 out of 100. What do we want to do first? Do we want to do the fraction? We want to do the decimal? Do the percent? I don't think it really matters. So we have 11 out of 100 shaded. 11 100ths. Very good. This one doesn't need to be simplified, so it's just 11 100ths. And what is that as a percent? 11%. And as a decimal, 11 hundredths. Perfect. But then you might be like, well, why is those still white? Those in question. This says, well, if this is what's shaded, then what is not shaded? Because that is important. So if I have 11 out of the 100s that is shaded, then what is not shaded? Now I can go through and count all of these up here. Or I can just think in the terms of if 100 out of 100 gives me my 1 whole, then what is left? 89 hundredths. So I can count them, or I can just think this 89 plus this 11 together will give me 100, and it's 100 over 100, or 100 100ths gives me 1. This as a percent, again, this should equal up to 100%, will be 89%, and this is 89 hundredths as a decimal. Great job. So let's try one more. And I'm just going to erase these fairly quickly. All right, so let's try this one. And I'm going to go ahead and flip these back over. All right, so here we go. There we go. An L and a T. Remember, math at Terry's house. Yep, you guessed it. My first name initial, and my last name initial. So let's see. Go ahead and count them out. And let's see what is the percent first. Let's just start with that. So take a few minutes, count them out, write it down. What do we have? Good job. 20%. Wow, how nice is that? 20%. So as a decimal, how do we change that? Move your decimal point 2 places, or 20% gives me 2/10 or 20 hundredths. And as a fraction, this will be 2/10 or 21 hundredths. Remember, they are the same, but I have to reduce this fraction. Therefore, this is going to give me a fraction of 1/5. So if this is what's shaded, what is not shaded? Well, if this is 20%, what would give me 100%? Yep, 80% there. So 80% is what's in the white. And then I can do the 8/10 or 80%, 80 hundredths, or the 4/5 to give me 1 whole. Great job. Please take the time, and that link will be in your learning plan for you to play around with this after our session today. So, this is going to be our last practice for today before you get into your own practice. So again, we're going to look at this model and we're going to determine what's the percent, what's the fraction, the simplified fraction if needed, and our decimal number. So we're going to count them up. So if we're going to count each row, and we can look at this as a bar model as well. So we're going to count these numbers up. This up here just shows me the 20% that's in the light green to the whole figure, which is 100%. So just another way to look at this. So what's in blue that is shaded, again, take your pencil and you always want to just think about, where can I go to shade it in? That I'm going to count each one, and it gives me 65 units that I counted that are in blue. So that gives me 65 out of 100, 65%. So as a fraction, that's 65 hundredths, but I can simplify that. Go back to your factors of 100. So if you did not write those factors of 100 down, it may be to your advantage just to go backwards and write those factors down so that you will know what you can divide both your numerator and your denominator by. So in this case, I'm going to divide both by 5, and it gives me a simplified fraction of 13/20ths and a decimal of 65 hundredths. So if I look at my last problem, I have, again, count them up. I get 30. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back to this model. So again, this is representative as 20, 40, 60, and 80. Between the 60 and 80, there's that little black line. That kind of represents the 6,500. So it's an estimation because it's not perfectly drawn. So our last example, count them up. So take your time, count them up. It should be fairly simple. We have 3 holes and almost full, so we should have about 38%. Perfect. 38 hundredths as a fraction, but then we have to simplify our fraction. So we're going to divide both our numerator and our denominator by 2, which gives me 19/50ths. And as a decimal, always think about, just like you said, 38 hundredths. 38 hundredths as a decimal. Great job. So here's your independent practice. You're going to count your representation, and you're going to represent it as a percent, a fraction, simplified fraction, and a decimal. The solution to your independent practice will be provided to you tomorrow during your next session. So did we meet our objective of today? I will be able to use a visual model to represent fractions, decimals, and percent. I think we did. You have done a great job hanging in there with me. Your final task of today will be to spend about 10 to 15 minutes in your Dreambox account. There are some notes attached. As you can see above, there are some notes attached. The notes are converting fractions, decimals, and percents. So it's just some basic steps. You might want to look at them just to get ahead of our lesson for tomorrow. So during our session, we're going to be looking at not so much friendlier numbers by looking at them by factors of 100, or just some other numbers, because we can take any fraction and convert it to a decimal and to a percent. So thank you so much for hanging in there with me today. Remember, we're going to come back on tomorrow to have math at Terry's house.